Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 5 Facts. Today, we're going to be talking about the 1979 Don Coscarelli hit Phantasm. This is a movie that was sort of born out of necessity. Don Coscarelli was looking, after making his first two films, to find a little bit more commercial success. He'd heard that horror was a good place to start for this because it has such a rabid fan base. If you're watching this right now, you know what I'm talking about. The movie itself got off to kind of a shaky start. He was a little inexperienced, he was renting a lot of equipment, and it was done kind of on a shoestring budget compared to a lot of movies from the day. But he ended up filling it with gore and terror and heart and ended up making a cult classic that still endures today. The film itself is about two brothers who had recently lost their parents, going through grief, and basically the younger brother is kind of out on his own. The older brother's out doing his thing. He's the high school student. He's just a little bit removed from his younger brother. The younger brother's trying to find answers for his grief, and it leads him to a cemetery where he watches the tall man basically grab a coffin, put it into his car, and drive off. This leads down a path of altered dimensions, aliens, flying steel murder balls, crazy mausoleums, and a lot of fun action. This is a really, really fun movie that holds up today despite being made almost 40 years ago. Phantasm is a cult classic that thrived in theaters and thrives today. It was made for around $300,000, brought in more than $12 million at the box office, and ended up making a lot of money off of DVD, Blu-ray, and VHS sales. It grew into a franchise with, I believe, 4 movies now. Without any further ado, let's get to the facts. Fact number 1. The MPAA tried to kill this movie by rating it X. The Motion Picture Association of America gave this movie an X rating immediately. They said it was because of the gore behind the steel balls, which is very notorious. You see a guy getting drilled into his forehead and blood spurting everywhere. But also they cited because the corpse then wet itself on the ground. So apparently, gore shooting out of foreheads is okay, but he better not wet himself. It's a little bit weird from the MPAA on this. Noted film critic Charles Champlin ended up calling the board of directors on the MPAA and asking for them to revise this. He was highly respected at the time, and his opinion carried enough weight that they were able to drop it to an R rating. Fact number 2, the production was long and amateurish. Don Coscarelli was 23 when he sought out to make Phantasm. He raised the money for the film independently and tried to cut corners where he could. He would rent equipment on Friday afternoons so that he could have it for the whole weekend and only get charged for one day, bringing the equipment back Monday morning. It took him more than a year of work to film this movie. Some of those weekends, people put in double 20-hour shifts just to make sure that this movie got done. Coscarelli couldn't actually afford a cameraman, so he ended up directing, filming, and also a lot of other things for this project, such as editing. He had his mother, who is also a horror novelist, do the makeup for the film. Along with the lower budget came a little bit of an experience. One day, when filming a shotgun scene, a blank went off so close to Coscarelli that it actually caught his coat on fire. Fact number 3. The orbs are literally the stuff of nightmares. The steely orbs from Phantasm have been a part of horror lore for quite a while now. They've been one of those iconic things that come out, like Jason's machete or hockey mask, things like that. People like to cling to it. They came about from a dream Coscarelli had where he was running through high marbled walls, being chased by spheres with a long needle that was trying to pierce his brain. He ended up changing it a little bit so that it would be a drill going for his brain, but the concept pretty much stayed the same. The reason why these are such enduring items in horror is because of how violent and fun and also horrible the deaths are that come from it. You see more of them in other Phantasm franchise movies, but in the first one you do get to see a few very violent deaths. The way the effects were done for this was they actually had a baseball pitcher throw the balls from behind the camera, and then later they reversed the film and had it look like they were coming towards the camera. It's a very simple effect, but it worked very well. They used the same technique for whenever it actually would drill into people's heads, where it would just fly in, stick right on the forehead, and basically that was them putting the makeup there and yanking it off. One of the actors, after they had this done to them, drove home without taking the makeup off because they were just too tired. They were going to shower at home. This led to a very awkward conversation when he was later pulled over on his way home. The cop did not actually believe he was an actor and wondered why his clothes were blood-soaked. Eventually, the misunderstanding was cleared up. Fact number 4. Angus Scrimm helped forge the tall man character. The thing you remember most from these films aren't the comedic relief, it's not the kids, it's not the other actors, it's the tall man. Angus Scrimm had a lot to do with this. When he initially heard he was going to be playing a twisted mortician alien that was making dwarves for his own home planet through an altered dimension, he got pretty excited and started to try to figure out how the role was going to work. He thought he would mess with an accent, but they decided that ultimately he needed to sound like he was from out of this world, that it couldn't be anything normal, the mannerisms had to be different. Initially, Don Coscarelli tried to direct him in this, but as Angus Scrimm continued with the script, he started placing his own mannerisms, ideas, and basically inflections into the character. This ended up making the tall man that we know today. Scrimm understood that the movie itself is about mourning and grief, about the character that he's representing is basically a child's view of that mortician that's forcing them to go and take care of business, or to take care of the business of their parents dying. That they're having to deal with this immense emotional stress and basically be pushed through by this dark figure who just works with bodies all day. He wanted that to be overly exaggerated, and he wanted to really permeate the screen. Many other horror icons were inspired by this. The dreamlike qualities would go on to help Nightmare on Elm Street be created. It is also believed that Slender Man is based off of the Tall Man. First off, you've got a man who's fairly tall, but is in lifts, so he looks even taller, and he's in a suit that makes it even tighter, so he looks long and slender, more slender than he actually is. Without the Tall Man, Slender Man probably would not exist. Fact number 5. J.J. Abrams is responsible for the remastered release. J.J. Abrams has been a fan of Phantasm for a long time. At one point, he asked Coscarelli to set up a screening of the old film. When Coscarelli said that he didn't have a high-quality print, J.J. Abrams actually said that he could use his technicians and they would make a new high-quality print for him. After some calls, this actually led to the full 4K release of Phantasm on Blu-ray and digital services. It's hard to overstate how awesome this restoration was. It's like it was filmed with modern cameras looking back as a period piece. It doesn't look like a film from 1979 anymore. Because the effects were practical, it all holds up, even in 4K. There are a few lines where it might look a little bit cheesy, but there's no wires hanging, there's no weird George Lucas CGI re-representations. It's just the movie purely filtered through a high-definition lens off of the original prints, and it looks amazing, and you guys should check it out if you enjoy the Phantasm franchise. On a side note also related to J.J. Abrams, Captain Phasma, the shiny stormtrooper in The Force Awakens, is actually named after Phantasm. When he saw concept art for this, he immediately called it Phasma as homage to Coscarelli's film. The strangest thing about loss and grief is the dreamlike quality it imparts on the people left behind. You feel like you can just expect a call from them, that you'll be able to walk into a room and embrace the loved ones that you lost. The surreal nature of death creates an altered reality that everyone must face when somebody passes. It's a huge paradigm shift, and it doesn't leave people feeling like it's even real for a while. This is why Phantasm is so effective. You end up feeling like you're a child wandering through a dream, through a terrible nightmare that just seems like it should end but doesn't. You're trying to seek out meaning, you're trying to seek out something else that will spare you the burden of the loss, but you're just not finding it. Towering figures like the Tall Man put you through the motions. They take the body from the family, pump it so full of chemicals that it doesn't decay, sew the eyes shut, and somehow you're just supposed to be able to cope with this loss while all this is happening. Essentially, they are altering what was into the new thing that is. All the while, sometimes for the first time, you are dealing with that inevitable specter of death and realizing your own mortality. Phantasm fills you with this dread. It gives you a surreal, potent mixture of agony and confusion. It finds our common fears, our ideas of mortality, and makes us face them. As a movie that's 40 years old, the themes still ring true today. It's an amazing film. It's one of my favorites. It was one of the odder moments of my childhood, too, because a friend of mine actually recounted the death of his own father whenever we were watching it. It's a movie where, I realized a lot of these things for the first time. I was probably 8 to 10 years old. It's a completely different feeling whenever you end up relating these horrible things that are on the screen to things that have happened in other people's lives. And I think that's part of the reason why I have such a connection to this movie, is because those poignant thoughts actually came about while I was watching it. So it's an entirely different experience. It's hard to quantify exactly what makes Phantasm one of my favorites, other than these emotions that are tied to it. Like I said, there are parts that are cheesy, there are parts that are a little bit just not quite right for what you would want from a horror movie. But overall, it excels, it has heart, it has this level of ambitious craftsmanship to it. If you are a horror fan, you would do very well to check this out. Check it out again if you haven't seen it for a while, especially on that remastered edition. If you have any stories about Phantasm, you have any facts or anything like that, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I love reading your comments. I love seeing that you guys are sharing this. Please, if you feel so inclined, drop this on Reddit, throw it on your Facebook, show it to other horror people. I would really appreciate it. The channel appreciates it, and I'm glad you guys made it this far. Check out the other 5 Facts videos if you haven't, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.